Hey, I hope you stayed with us. Sorry for that little minor technical delay. I know we stayed live there. There's a little jumbling around. It is time for Ask the Doc with Dr. William Whaley. And no, thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist, but no, I have no idea why Dr. Whaley's wearing this jacket. No, I have no idea why he has his hood on, but I'm for sure Dr. Whaley's going to tell us. How are you today, sir?
I'm great. I'm great.
Okay.
So this morning we're going to talk about fever blisters. Is that it or not?
I don't know. What we're going to talk about is I've had to practice all week saying cognitive.
All right. Well, Sam, I told you I'd tell you why I'm wearing this. Okay. Well, one of the reasons I'm wearing it is it's cold outside all week, but I'm not cold now. I want to couch this whole business about the physical examination of the president in concepts that I think people really need to consider. And the first time, this jacket here is a jacket that I wore to Antarctica. And the first time in my life that I ever was involved, and this is 1969, in what I would call a special health hazard analysis of a person for the ability to do a job and not become a liability, was examining some naval military people who were going to spend a year on Antarctica.
Slow down. Now, I don't usually do this. So you went to Antarctica in 1960.
No. I examined naval people who were going to go
to Antarctica.
They were going to go.
So
the issue
you
was,
were examining them
yes,
for being able to
stay a year in those adverse conditions and not become a liability.
Not become a liability.
All
so
right,
if your examination was said this individual, much like an astronaut, should not be there a year.
Yeah, it's going to be a fitness for duty.
Fitness for duty.
Okay.
Got it.
All right, now.
All right.
Let's stick.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, let's stick with that just a minute, because that's the early days of nuclear submarines. And nuclear submarines went down at the naval base in Charleston, where I spent the first few months before I went to Vietnam, and they would go under the ocean and stay under the ocean for 6 months. And national security did not allow them to pop up and take a guy to the emergency room because he had a ruptured eardrum or he had an acute case of appendicitis. And those ships really you wanted to be able to put a guy at sea who wasn't going to become a liability in 6 months away from anything. So here's these are young, healthy people we're talking about.
Right.
But you were examining them in a different way than you would just examine somebody else, okay?
I like the phrase fitness for duty.
Fitness for duty. I'm going to stick with that job. Okay, now, interprofessional athletics. Everybody knows that in a few weeks they're going to have the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Right.
There will be 273 top athletes who go to Indianapolis and who will have what I like to call a living autopsy. They are going to be examined. Let's say you've got 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are at the top. They will be examined first by a pool of doctors representing all 32 teams, and then every team that has them on their list to possibly draft will bring them in individually and do another physical on them. So they're going to have somewhere between 4 and 12 real intense physical examinations. Now, we know how fast they can run, how well they can throw, how high they can jump, because they're going to jump and they're going to lift weights and they're going to do all that on the field. So what are they going to look for that 10 different teams have to go to? We did the first echocardiograms on professional athletes with the Atlanta Thrashers in 1968. I mentioned that because one of the tests that the president had was a stress echocardiogram. We're going to come back to the president in a minute. So that guy who's the top draft choice as a quarterback might get rejected by 1 or 2 of these teams for some psychological thing. He's had 2 speeding tickets, or he beat up his girlfriend in the 9th grade. They may think he doesn't meet their their culture, as you know. Some
Right.
teams don't take them. But most of the rejections are going to be because of some small defect in his labrum in his shoulder, or they get worried about his echo or something. But they're gonna know everything about that guy. So now we go to the anytime, and that player now, if he is in the league a year or two and gets traded, he's going to go right back through that microscope before they accept him in the trade, because they're going to trade the guy and take a $30 million salary on. They're going to make sure that the guy can play the game. Okay, now we got the President of the United States. I've known two White House physicians pretty well in my career. I worked with one of them on drug abuse, and he was a Navy guy. Our doctor here is an admiral. Most of them are captains.
Admiral Jackson, right?
That's right, but you'll never hear. He's the first one I've ever heard of who reached admiral. Why did he reach admiral? Because he's been there so long. This isn't a fraternity brother of Trump's that
Right.
he gave a perk to come to the White House. This is a professional who's been there for one whole presidency of Obama, been there for much of Bush. Now, the heavy lifting in the White House is done by the nurse practitioner or the PA, who's there 24 hours a day. The PA for Reagan and Bush and Clinton was a good friend of ours and worked for us at the Thrasher.
So there's a physician on call and there for the President of the United States 24 hours a day, 7
Well,
days
there's a
week.
physician's assistant or nurse
Or nurse
practitioner
practitioner.
in the building all the time.
All the time.
And there is an EMT group in there with an ambulance with EMTs in there all the time. And the admiral goes home. But he's right around the corner. But anyhow, you will hear, I brought Medicare guidelines because he mentioned in his discussion that the cognitive test that he gave was one of a series that are in Medicare guidelines to be administered to Medicare participants under certain conditions. Medicare doesn't pay for physicals, period. Medicare pays for an annual visit where they take your height, weight, and blood pressure. They're supposed to ask you, do you have guns in your home? If you have guns in your home, are they under lock and key? Are you sad, and do you feel safe in your home? Do you smoke? And if you smoke, quit. But there is no portion of a physical examination other than height, weight, blood pressure, body surface area, and discuss it if you're obese, that Medicare, quote, pays for. If in that examination where the physician is supposed to talk to you, you seem like you're nuts or you don't know what he's talking about, then the guidelines give you a list of mental status exams you can give him for cognitive ability. And then if you want to order a test because he says, I have chest pain every time I climb a hill, or my daddy died at 28 of a heart attack, you can do an EKG if you apply to Medicare and get covered. Well, that's not the type of exam that he had, all right? When the Admiral had began his testing, that he was tested and that these things met Medicare guidelines. But the next thing he said was he was seen by 12 specialists.
Wait a minute, I'm just trying to stay. So you're talking about Admiral Jackson in this physical. There was a team involved.
He did not do it himself. He did only portions of it himself. There were 12
specialists involved in
this exam. Now,
see, we don't hear that out there.
No, but you can just listen carefully, because I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Because if you just read it, it begins with his height, weight, and blood pressure, and then it says he had 20/20 vision. He had no retinal pathology, and his pressures were normal. So, starting at the top of the head, an ophthalmologist took him in a room, did a slit lamp exam, just like you'd do if you went for a careful exam with the ophthalmologist, photographed his retina for any type of macular degeneration or anything like that, when he finished, an ear, nose, and throat went in there with one of those little scope things, and he went all the way up through his nose, down to his vocal cords, looked in his bronchial tubes, because he tells you that he didn't have any airway obstruction, that his oral pharynx was in good shape, and when he finished, they did an ultrasound to his carotids.
Right, exactly.
They did an abdominal ultrasound. A cardiologist came in, they did an EKG, and then they did a stress echo. Last Monday, I had a stress echo. I'm going to get a cardiac PET scan this Monday. And that stress echo that they did to me took an hour and 10 minutes. So you think, the stress test took at least 18 to 22 minutes because he's on that. He's got to get set up, do an EKG. Then they exercise him to his maximum, and they do an echocardiogram there. That echocardiogram will tell you his ejection fraction was 60 to 65%. That's what it is of probably Sam. You and I are probably 50. I might be 48, and you might be 50. You're younger than I. So he actually has an ejection fraction of somebody in their 20s or 30s. So he passed the cardiac test. I'm going to come back to it again in a minute because I know Sanjay Gupta, and I have a lot of things to say about
That's
him.
That's the CNN doctor.
I won't say on television. He's an Atlanta doctor, by the way. Remember that.
He's the guy on CNN.
That's right. And he's an Atlanta doctor, remember. Okay, just remember he's an Atlanta doctor. All right, so the cardiologist did his thing. The pulmonary doctor came in and did his thing, and then took him across the hall, and he had a spiral CT scan of his chest. Now, you think a chest X-ray is accurate. A spiral CT scan is cutting his lung under electronic conditions into quarter-inch slices to look for anything in there. And that's the test that they would give somebody who used to smoke and all that. But they gave it to him because he's the president. It costs a couple grand, if you go get it at some hospital. You can't even do it at most local hospitals. You'd have to be at an academic center, and it was perfect. All right, now, you got a gastroenterologist who came in there, ultrasounded his liver and his spleen and his gallbladder and did all the rest of that. You got a urologist who went in there and checked his genitals, checked his prostate. You've got a vascular surgeon who came in there and checked his peripheral pulses. He talked to you all about his peripheral pulses. You've got a neurologist or a neuropsychologist, don't know which it would have been, probably was a neurologist, who came in and stroked him with a feather and beat him with a little hammer and ran this thing across the bottom of his foot. And then at his request,
the president,
his request,
President of the United States, and let's just say the reason, the reason the president requested this test is the media unfit to serve. We keep hearing unfit to serve, doesn't have the faculties to be in the Oval Office, early stages of dementia. I mean, if you watch the media out there, there's a whole list. So I guess maybe the guy's tired of it. So at his request.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you there a minute.
Okay.
For about 30 years, there's a company in Boston, Massachusetts, that's well known because they make razor blades. And they make foam shave cream. And they've got a great ad now where one of their 29-year employee, one of their nearly 2,000 employees, talks about the quality, and they show the razors that they made in the 40s all the way up to the new razors. When they took on, and there's the reason that I did this, not important, but when they took on a new president to that company, as part of that recruiting process, they sent that president to Atlanta for a physical examination.
Right.
Because they're getting ready to sign a contract with him
I
for many, many millions of dollars.
And
we were doing physical exams for an airline at that time that included treadmill tests and sigmoidoscopies and stuff that wasn't part of it. And we also did, because of airline pilots, we had a neurological test called the cognitive screen for airline pilots that we administered to executives, and I gave to some governors and senators and House members and stuff, and big business executives, as much for the individual as for the company.
Right.
To know the guy's worth the billions they're going to pay him. So yes, I think that Trump said, give me some sort of a test, but I guarantee you, had he not, they would have given him a screening test, which you and I have already done today. I've screened you and you've screened me for orientation to time, place, person, situation. We have screened one another for knowledge of current events. You know, so we know pretty much that we're cognitively normal. By this conversation.
I needed that.
All right. So this test that they gave him, we have a minute.
I'm sorry, you just don't know. You just don't. Yeah, you just don't know me and test.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give you a quick down and dirty. You know when they take the guy into the tent on the side of the NFL game?
Yes.
Okay. When they sit him down there, they do a very quick neurological. They watch his hands. They make him stand on one foot. We got a hockey player stand on one foot. With a hockey blade ice skate, that's even harder. They make them take their finger and go like this back and forth, and then they say, I want you to remember 4 things. Now everybody's got a different one. Mine's bell, book, and orange. I'm going to ask you that again in 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you that again in 10 minutes. You remember it. So that's a very minimal test of have you been injured. Now, before season, every NFL player and every NHL player takes a much more complicated test on a computer that can be done with people who don't speak English. So it's really got a lot to do with hand-eye coordination and quick memory, because these people, you know, don't all speak English, but they get a grade for you. Because my grade, you know, Michael Jordan's grade for speed may be up here, and the average NBA player may be here. And when he's had a head injury, they re-administer that same test that he's taken to training camp. He took back during the combine. They give him the test again, and he has compared to himself, and he has to hit 1 standard deviation from his score, or he doesn't clear the concussion protocol a week later and get to go back to work. Okay, so there's very complicated different ways of doing this, but this one here is really kind of fun because it doesn't take 15 seconds to do. This thing's going to take you 15 minutes to do, and it's really sort of simple, but it's a one test thing. Everybody's seen this on the screen. They've shown this portion of the thing. The portion they showed on the screen was this portion. The instructions for giving it and interpreting it are 6 pages long. So Sam is going to administer this test to you this afternoon. It requires no special training. All you have to be able to do is read it and read a watch. So that's cog screen test. We have a couple of the expert panel who say they printed it off on their computer yesterday and that they scored 30. My partners and some of the guys I know have scored 28 or 29 on there. So if you guys scored 30, you're smarter than some of the doctors that I know. 30 is perfect. Now, this test does not tell you that you might not be paranoid or something else, but at least from a cognitive place, that test right there tells you you're in good shape. Now, I'm gonna go one more place because you missed what I think is the most egregious abuse of this test that could possibly happen, and you see it all the time on the news, where you get some information. I'm gonna pick on Fox. Fox will do exactly the same thing. You've got a crime over here, you've got something over there, and they get a retired New Orleans homicide detective and they get a retired CIA guy, and they start commenting on the facts and telling you what they think is going on. Sanjay Gupta came to Atlanta in 1998 to the Department of Neurosurgery at Emory. All of this is public information. He had had a radio or a TV thing wherever he had come from. And he went to Ted Turner, who owned the Atlanta Braves, Hawks, and the Thrashers. And he said, I'm the smartest guy that ever came down the pike, and I want to be your team doctors. And he said, well, I'm real happy with the team doctors that I've got. And I'm not going to give them up. That's what he wanted my job. He wanted the job for the guys that had the Hawks and had the Braves. With his TV thing, he went over to CNN, who Ted Turner owned, but Ted wasn't running it, and he volunteered to become a commentator on CNN, and he used to have his own program on CNN. Now, he's a neurosurgeon. When Danny Heatley had his car wreck and Dan Snyder was killed and Danny was hurt, he was in the emergency room down at Grady, 2 o'clock in the morning, I went down there. We got Sanjay Gupta in there to take care of him, and he's a great neurosurgeon. But he is a very liberal guy, and he's absolutely convinced he knows more about everything in the world than Galileo or anybody else. So he and many, Sanjay knows. He knows me, and if he gets a clip at this, he's going to know what he's going to say. That's Whaley again. But
he's getting a clip.
He's getting a clip.
He is.
I mean, people in the media took the calcium score.
Thank you.
Of Trump's calcium score, which had gone to below 100 to a little over 100. And they took his LDL cholesterol, which was 143, taking 10 milligrams of Crestor, and they took those two pieces of information. And a guy out in California says he has a 25% chance of having a heart attack within 10 years. This is the most terrible thing I can possibly imagine. Now, remember, Clinton's already had his angioplasty or bypass or whatever it was. Way younger than Mr. Trump is. And they ain't worried much about that. But they took two pieces of information who are true, and unrelated, and made a conclusion that Trump's a heart attack waiting for a place to happen. Everybody that I know that's an expert in this field, and if you read those things carefully, you've got a contrasting guy who says, I recommend that you don't do calcium scores on anybody who takes a statin. That's number one. Two, nobody that I know recommends calcium scores for anybody that's over the age of 70. Because the calcium score, when you're taking a statin, what the statin's doing is dropping your cholesterol, and any sluggish bit of cholesterol that was in the coronary arteries should scar. Well, what happens when it scars? It puts calcium in there. Now, a high calcium score is 700. His went from 70 to 120, and these self-styled experts are giving him heart attack when he just passed a rigid stress echocardiogram, and there was no wall motion abnormality, which there would have been if he had any degree of obstruction. So
CNN,
not just CNN, everybody. The guys in L.A., the New York Times. I mean, I just pick on Sanjay because he was the one you could see on TV.
They have whipped everybody up into a frenzy of this calcium score that the president is a candidate for 3 to 5 years for a heart attack.
Well, so are you, and so am I.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. I didn't want to say it, but I was getting ready to say, several people are.
Wait, we ain't done yet. We got to go. We got to stick with this.
I'm with you on this.
Okay, all right. The most common form of death in our country is coronary heart disease, cerebral vascular disease, or peripheral vascular disease, and 55% of the deaths are in that category. So, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to give a 55% chance that Trump's going to die of cardiovascular disease. That's just betting black and red. I mean, it's a 50-50 chance. Now, he's 71 years old. Is he going to do that within 10 years? Is he 71? Is that right?
Yes, 71.
That would make him 81. Well, 81's kind of old, But I would say that at 71, on the average, his life expectancy gets him into his mid-80s. Don't forget, I was medical director of a large life insurance company. Gets him into his mid-80s. So a life insurance company would sell him life insurance thinking he's going to get into his mid-80s just on a statistical basis. Now, just because of his age. But if you take into effect what his cholesterol is and how he's done on that treadmill, and the fact that he does not smoke and that he doesn't drink, I'm going to tell you, the guy, and it wasn't his, you know, some of the people in his family lived to 93 or stuff. I think any thought that he's a cardiovascular risk is stupid. Any thought that he is a Alzheimer patient at the moment is stupid. That doesn't mean he can't be in 2 years or 10. And I'm not going to get into the tweeting and everything else, but I saw nothing in that exam that said anything except that he was biologically in his 50s. And I've seen the press, who's trying to get rid of him, take normal or even ideal or better than ideal values and say he's a risk. The one thing I'm going to say about the LDL is if he was my patient, I wouldn't have him on 10 milligrams of Crestor, I'd have him on 40, and it would go down below 100. And I've said before to you, you can't be too rich, too thin, too good looking, or have too low an LDL or too high an HDL. And I have all of my patients' LDLs below 100. So if that was my patient, I would do exactly what the doctor did. I'd raise his Crestor dose to 40 milligrams or 20 milligrams. If I raised it to 20, I'd check his cholesterol in 3 months, and if it wasn't below 100, I'd raise it to 40. And that's all I do.
I know we have our questions, but
We're not going to them today.
Huh?
We're saving them till next week, Sam and I.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to do, though. I have another question on this. Because I want to, folks, thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist. And what we have done this morning is, Dr. Whaley, you have been listening to the media out there, and that's why you should be watching this show. I just say it nicely, because this is the kind of things we're going, we expose and bring to you. Dr. Whaley this morning, Admiral Jackson came out with President Donald Trump's health evaluation, which the media just cannot stand that the guy's healthy. They just, something's got to be wrong. But Dr. Whaley has broke that down for you this morning. I have one more.
You're going to use, I want you to change your verbiage and say,
okay, sure.
Health hazard analysis is what he had.
Health hazard analysis. I usually don't do that. He does. Sam, remember that. Dr. Whaley, health hazard analysis. Remember that. No, I'm serious. I will remember that. I like that.
Yeah. Good.
Fit for duty, too. Health hazard analysis
and fitness for duty.
And President Trump passed both.
Both.
My last question before we go. I know this sounds silly, but let's go take it back to Rajay. Diet Coke. I am just, you know, we're sitting there, and I'm watching as he takes a drink of his tab. I'm watching Admiral Jackson brief the media on his fit for duty examination, and John Carl, spelled with a K, Jon, no H, John Carl says, but wait a minute, something's got to be wrong. How could he drink Diet Coke, eat fried chicken, go to McDonald's? Please, like they're begging, please tell us you're wrong. The president, and then the guy says, hey, he has good genes is all I can say.
What I said.
And maybe the fact that he doesn't drink, do drugs, or smoke his whole entire life. But there's two things. Rajay, the media, the Diet Coke. I mean, they say he drinks 12 a day. I don't know. What say you on the fried foods that he's eating, the Diet Coke, just to satisfy?
All right, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have said repeatedly that Crestor or Lipitor trumps, how you like that? Trumps fried chicken, steak, and burgers, because the dietary portion of your cholesterol level is not the big number. It's the genetic portion of your cholesterol level, and the drugs will lower it. So when I go and have a burger, I say I'm going to take an extra Lipitor when I get home. I would like to see him a little bit lighter, but let's go back to the Diet Coke. When I was in the Navy and we were on duty 4 hours and off 4, they were working 12, 18, or 24 straight hours in a combat environment, guys would drink 6 or 8 cups of Navy coffee a day. That makes Starbucks down here look like, and the amount of caffeine that he is getting, and he's sleeping 5 hours a night, remember. He's got 18 hours a day where he can drink caffeine, where you and I should be, we go to bed, hopefully we go to bed after we've been up about 16 hours or something. His caffeine intake is not greater than 3 big Starbucks a day. And a lot of people can do it, and a lot of people can't.
So if networks out there are doing the shattering breaking news and evaluating his Diet Coke intake of 12 a day, those people that are going to Starbucks 3 times a day, there's really no difference.
Not any difference.
Okay, I got one more question.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, just one more. Now, because the media is just begging for something to be wrong. You got to figure there's something wrong here.
He's taking Propecia for baldness. Oh, that's got tells you. Remember that? He's taking Propecia, and you look at his hair. Now, everybody wants to make a big deal out of his hairdo. But what that told you was that if you got in there into the bathroom when he got out of the shower, he's got a comb over because he's got some degree of baldness, and he is taking Propecia. Second, he has a cream he rubs on his face for rosacea.
Yeah.
Rosacea is the red nose, red cheeks thing, and you can take a pill for it or you can use a cream for it. So he's got 2 conditions of aging. Biological,
how dare you?
Balding and rosacea.
Oh, we found something, folks.
So
CNN would be happy right there.
They will, but neither of those are going to interfere with the ability to do the job.
I got to finish my question.
All right, go ahead.
The world is waiting to find out. The world is waiting for this answer. Did the Admiral, forgive me, Admiral, did the Admiral mislead the American people by saying he weighed 237 pounds? Why would he come out and say that? Because, or was it 239? 239, I'm sorry, 2 more. Because the media has put him side by side with athletes that weigh 239, and they're just like, there was actually one of the reporters said, will you get on the scales in public? Why would the Admiral come out? I mean, can Trump be 239 and look the way he looks?
Absolutely.
Absolutely?
Absolutely. You look at some of the running backs, for example, who are 240 pounds, and they are as hard as a rock, and their percentage body fat is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10. Trump's is 20, what was his BMI? 28 point something? Up to 25 is normal, so he's less than 30. So his percentage body fat is probably 22, 24. And being of Anglo-Saxon European origin, the way he puts fat on his body is going to be midline, and that body shape he's got, not much different than Bill Clinton had when he was overweight, is perfectly consistent with weighing 237 or 239 pounds at, how tall is he? 6'2" or is he 6'3"? The media also said his New York driver's license says he's 6'2", and the Admiral said he was 6'3". I don't care how tall he is, really.
Folks, I'm your host, BKP, and we've been here with Dr. Whaley. Ask the Doc. We know we have some questions. We apologize, but we really just wanted this morning to be able to bring you the best.
Sam, put up a lip picture.
The best, not second best, not high quality, the absolute best analysis of what took place with the president's health hazard analysis.
Health hazard analysis.
Health hazard analysis, right?
And fitness for duty.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So just the fact that I remembered
analysis.
health hazard analysis, I passed part of the cognitive test?
Yes, you did.
There you go. We have broke down the health for CNN and Rajay and everyone out there, the health hazard analysis by Admiral Jackson this past week. We've talked about the weight, the Diet Coke, his cognitive responses in the test. We broke it down here.
Calcium score.
Calcium score, everything. Dr. Whaley, thank you very much. Thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist. And when we get back, we're going to have the all-star panel. Jane's not feeling real well today, so she won't be with us, but our thoughts and prayers out there. I hope you're watching, Jane. But we'll have, well, we got Rick and Bruce, so, you know, we'll go with it anyway. We'll make a move, go with it anyway, right? All-star panel as soon as we return. Thank you very much, Dr. Whaley. I appreciate it.
Enjoyed it today.